Fatherhood. Sometimes it's a thankless job, but man, I want to tell you today, thank you. And my message today is for you to be you. And there's been a lot of people in society telling you not to be who you are as men. That doesn't mean going around acting like a tough guy, but what it does mean is this. Sometimes you know certain things need to be done, and you need to do it, and you can do it. You guys remember Bobby Knight, don't you? The legendary basketball coach of Indiana University. Of course, you guys probably don't like Indiana University, but I do believe he got his coaching start in Ohio, didn't he, with Ohio State? Is that true? Okay. He was known for his fiery temper, if you remember, and his ability to throw chairs. He was quite talented with that. You know, he wasn't soft. I remember reading a book that Jean gave me in high school for a birthday present. It was Season on the Brink, and it was about that championship season they had with Steve Alford. And I was reading the things that he was saying to his players, and it was rough. He rode them hard. But you know what? He took a lot of mediocre talent, and they won. He wouldn't always get the best players, but he could get the best out of players. And that's a skill that's been left behind in coaching. See, behind that rough exterior was a man who believed in discipline, accountability, and the idea that young men could be more than what they thought they were. He didn't always have the most talented, like I told you, but he built championship teams. And players who bought into the system, worked hard, and respected the process, well, they enjoyed success. Now, since his departure, this is the part I want you to realize. Indiana hasn't hoisted another national title banner since then. Say what you say about his methods, but Bobby Knight raised boys and turned them into men, and turned average talent into extraordinary results. Sometimes it's tough love, the unglamorous, thankless kind that leaves the longest legacy. Now, to be fair, Bobby Knight's dismissal didn't come out of nowhere. His temper and behavior crossed lines, and that couldn't be ignored. And that's not what I'm asking out of men today. Accountability had to come. But what followed was telling. Indiana, once proud of its tough, disciplined brand of basketball, grew hesitant to bring in another tough-nosed coach. Why? Because the game was changing. And bigger schools had the money, the flash, the facilities, and more, they offered comfort and flexibility to young athletes who didn't want to be pushed too hard. In that climate, discipline looked like a liability. Demanding coaches started to disappear. But with that shift, something else was lost. The kind of firm, consistent leadership that molds character. And the same thing is happening in the culture at large. We don't just fear failure, we fear correction. We fear strength that holds a standard, and yet that's exactly what fatherhood is supposed to supply. My main passage today will be coming out of Ephesians chapter 5, and we'll be looking at a few verses. And to begin with, I'd like to start with chapter 5, verse 25, and it says as follows. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and blameless. The marital relationship is compared to Christ and his church. And what does Christ want out of his church? It says that he wants to wash her, cleanse her, to help her to be the best that she can be. Haven't we been told, men, that since we're not a woman, that we have no say-so in women's affairs? Let me tell you just right now, right off the bat, abortion won't stop until men come back into leadership and say, we're not going to allow this. It's up to us to stop it. And the weakness that's permeating society, it will not stop until men say it's time to wash ourselves clean. And the church has to be that. And it has to stand up in society. And I tell you, I don't think it would take a fight. I think it would take just some righteous anger that would rise up from the churches so they knew that we meant business. And you're saying, Johnny, why are you saying all that stuff? Well, because this was a Christian nation. The foundations were laid by Christian men. who brought their families and instilled into those families good principles. Not every man was a wife beater or a child beater, and all these things that we have been told about men and saying, oh, they're so dangerous and they're so toxic. Those have all have been lies to allow in weak men that have took advantage and have brought to society things that are absolutely reprehensible. It's our job as men to look after our wives like Jesus looks after his church. You know, that statement from Paul was revolutionary, the one I just read. The gospel didn't diminish women. It elevated them. But it did so without ignoring reality. Paul still recognized that men and women were different. Men are generally physically stronger. You know, I don't need a PhD to know that. And I don't even really need my Bible to know that. I have these things called eyes. I have this thing called experience. I've met some pretty tough girls. And I tell you what, I probably think twice about messing with Ronda Rousey. But I tell you what, though. There's the rule, and then there is the exception. And why are we always living our lives nowadays because of an exception? Shouldn't we be living by the rule? Men, their calling is to lead in home and the church. And the church carries weight and responsibility. And that's not privilege, that's just what God ordained. Today's feminism tries to erode those distinctions. It tells women they can have everything, do everything, be everything without men. And that if they fall short, men are to blame. It tells men they are no longer needed and treats motherhood like a burden rather than a blessing. But this illusion is only made possible by modern technology, not by the truth. The reality is this. Women do need men. They need to be led, they need to be cherished, and they need to be protected, even if from themselves. And when a man asks a woman to be the mother of his children, he isn't oppressing her. He's offering her the most sacred and honored invitation he can give. And that is what we used to call Normal. I know it's a bad word, but let's start saying it. Normal. That's what was normal. Normal is good. Normal is healthy. Normal is what God designed. Let's continue to chapter 6 and let's begin with verse 1. It says this, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may be well with you and that you may live long on earth. And fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. A father's role in life of his daughter is one of the most underappreciated responsibilities a man can carry. Daughters need to be protected, and not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. In a world that is constantly trying to define their worth by their beauty, their performance, or societal approval, a father provides something that is steadier, unconditional love. If a father's doing what he needs to do, he loves that little girl no matter what she looks like. He loves her beyond her beauty. He loves her beyond her ability to do jujitsu. He loves her because he loves her. She doesn't have to be special because she's already special to him. When a daughter knows her father delights in her, believes in her, and will stand between her and danger, she walks a little taller. She learns what to expect from men by watching the one who raised her. That's why fathers must be vigilant. Teach her what real love looks like so she won't settle for cheap imitations. So let's talk about boys. Think back to how we used to talk to young men, not to destroy them, but to shape them into men. We used to mock bad behavior. We used to shame laziness and even yell when appropriate when a young man was drifting. And that wasn't cruel. It was correction. And it was about shaking someone out of apathy before life crushed them. And I think that was a good thing. Even the military has drifted away from this to a certain level. They don't ride the new recruits quite as hard. But they're starting to figure this out again. You see, they would break you down. Why? To build you back up. Why are they yelling at you? Why are they in your face? Why is two guys on one side giving you the business? Well, because if you're out on the battlefield and it's loud and there are bombs exploding around you and you're fighting for your country, you need to be able to focus when your life is on the line. We get some people who go, oh, that's just terrible. That's disrespectful. Why are they treating those poor young men that way? They're getting them ready for a battle they need to fight. And if they don't fight that battle, it comes into our homes, our country, our churches. And then we're fighting it. I think we forgot what evil was and how bad it could be and how it destroys people. When we're standing up and fighting for the truth, it is absolutely 100% the right thing to do for the man of God to stand up and fight. And we say, no, that's a bad word. You can't say that, preacher. I just said it. And I'll say it again. Sometimes you got to fight. There's a time for peace, but there's also a time for war. And sometimes you make a song about it. Think about that. Following orders under pressure is not just a military trait, it's essential for unit cohesion and survival. This is a sinful world, and we need to recognize that. A little inside baseball. I forgot a little bit about the world we're living in. In my notes I wrote, this is a sinful world, this isn't Disneyland. And then I just realized how terrible and evil Disneyland is now, with all the sexual immorality that they're pushing on our kids. So that illustration's out the window. So cross that one out. But anyway, sometimes you forget where you're at. Fatherhood is not always raising your voice. Did Dirty Harry ever raise his voice? I don't think so. But one thing a father does do all the time is evaluate. And what you're trying to figure out, what you're evaluating is you're trying to determine what is needed. And sometimes what is needed for family and friends and for society, depending upon your position, is that sometimes society needs a swift kick in the high knee. And other times it needs a hug and mercy. But we've told men, no, you can't be masculine, you can't be tough. But we need that. We need that. Not fake tough, not a tough guy, but someone who stands up. And you know what? It's not always about winning a fight. It's about being ready to fight. If you have enough men ready to fight, hopefully we won't have to. We'll stand together. Some of you other people are not going to get this, but maybe for the few of the younger ones. Right now they're trying to figure out how many men would it take to defeat one gorilla. Have you guys been catching this? It's all over the internet. Hopefully we don't have to fight a gorilla. We don't have to figure out how many it's going to take. But that's the debate that wages upon Reddit and Facebook as we stand at a possible war with foreign countries now. I think maybe we're a little misguided on what we're focusing on. When society tells a father to take it easy and he remembers his own father or his drill instructor, his first boss, or his coach, the one who lit a fire under him, and he knows what works, and then for you to come along and tell him, hey, you can't do what you want to do. You can't get serious. You can't get heavy. You can't yell. You can't instruct. You can't coach. You cannot punish. You cannot make them run laps. You cannot make them do push-ups. Well, what you're asking him to do is to ignore his God-given instincts. I think we forget we live in a fallen world. This is a sinful world. And men, we're the only ones that can provide and protect at an adequate basis, physically, spiritually, whatever. Men know that reading a parenting book by a man who's never had children is a big old waste of time, and I think we need to start saying that. Men, we've been bullied. We have been stuck out in the rain trying to change a tire. And a lot of us, some of you out there, have been on the battlefield with bullets swirling around you. You understand just how tough this world can be. We need to listen to you. I was thinking about this. The most wonderful thing in the world would be a grandfather, a father, and the grandson. You have the grandfather who knows what is right and wrong. And you have the son, the grandson, who knows what is going on today. And maybe the grandson and the grandfather don't really understand each other. And so it's hard for the grandfather to instill his values into the grandson. But if the grandfather's son is there, if you have 3 generations, you have that person in the middle who can still go out and do what needs to be done. He still got the energy, he still has the resources, and he still knows his children. And that link of a grandfather to a son to a grandson is an incredible, powerful part of the building block of family and society. It's the legacy that we're all needing and we're crying out for. And what's the number one problem that we're having? No fathers in the home. And there's lots of reasons for that, and it's not always the father's fault. The society has turned against married men, and we need to recognize that. We have young people today who are not dating. They're not going to get married. They're not going to have families. They're confused. Did you know Gen Z is the smallest generation we've had in a long, long time? Not only are they not going to replace the generation before them, but it's going to probably start a huge decline in the population of the United States. Hopefully, though, and there is some hope. Here's another statistic that you may not know. That the Zers and some of the Alphas, but mainly the Zers, I think. My girl's looking at me with, like, get right, Dad. You know, they know they're the smallest group in a long time. They're the most conservative. They're the ones who have grown up in the technology age, and they understand it, and guess what? They can tell when they're being lied to. And they are the hope for this country. They're more willing to be what they call based, and to have strong males coming out of that, and there's women in that generation that are ready to follow, and they're ready to rebuild this country. So let's hope that the surveys are correct. But men, if you can execute violence, you're the one who knows how best to instill peace, because you know what it takes to have peace. I want to show you a few verses here where people today would say, oh, this is terrible, this isn't Christian. But I want you to know about some verses that sometimes are getting skipped over on Father's Day. Did you know that Jesus said, now let him who has a purse take it along, likewise also a bag, and let him who has no sword sell his robe and buy one. Even Jesus said, a good sword is a good thing to have. Do you remember Nehemiah when they were rebuilding the wall? And they were rebuilding a wall to protect the temple that they had rebuilt, because that's the rebuilt temple. And they rebuilt the temple, and then the people were in danger, and they encircled the city with this wall, and they would work with one hand with a trowel and the other one with a weapon. Notice here what it says in chapter 4. When I saw their fear, I rose and spoke to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people. Do not be afraid of them, the outsiders coming in, the pagans, the ones who do not believe in the Lord thy God. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. And fight. Now listen, you're saying this is a bad word, but I don't think it is. Fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. What's been going on when Europe has been bringing in pagan religion? I don't even want to speak the horrors that are happening, but let's just say the women and the children are not safe at all right now in the Nordic countries. They're not safe in Germany, and they're not safe in the United Kingdom. And guess what? They're more and more not safe here in America. Paganism has its consequences. You're thinking about bringing in different people groups. You're thinking of the economy. I'm thinking about what they believe. And if they don't believe in anything, they don't believe in God. And they're quick to take advantage and use violence. And we need to protect each other. Genesis 14, this is Abram. And when Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men, born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan, and brought back all the goods, and also brought back his relative Lot with his possessions, and also the women and the people. You know what we're being told to do today? Well, we have a system, and you just wait for the system to get there. Do you remember when they said, let's get rid of the cops, and let's replace them with counselors? You know how many people were hurt then? We need people backing a gun. And I tell you what, And if they're too far away, it doesn't hurt the Christian to have one themselves. There is nothing wrong or sinful about that. Learn how to use it, take a class, and practice with it. Because the reason that we should have such things is because we realize just how evil is. And if we really believe that evil is evil, then we're going to be ready to stand up against it. Judges. To Gideon, an angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." 1 Samuel, David and Goliath. Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you." Oh, a Christian doesn't say something like that. Yeah, he does. If you're fighting Goliath, that's exactly what you say. And you execute and you do it. And it really paid off for that young David to spend all that time slinging a rock. He did that for years. And then one day he had a target right between the eyes. So here's our last thoughts. Number one, masculinity is not toxic. Masculinity is good. There's a masculine and a feminine, and we need both for the family. But we can't just have one without the other. Masculinity is a good thing. But masculinity needs to be focused. It needs to be exercised. It needs to be practiced. It needs to be trained. And young men need that. And seriously, that's something the church should be involved in. Helping to focus all that raw energy, because it's that raw energy that builds societies and protects us and keeps the bad people from hurting us. Wives and children must be led. If left of their own devices, we got some strong women out there. I love my wife, but in the beginning when we first met, she didn't have an opinion on anything. She could have been steamrolled. Part of my job as a husband was to teach her. Now she has a lot of opinions. Wow. But she knows what good is. She knows what evil is. And she won't put up with stuff now. She realizes when she's being lied to, she knows it. Same thing for my children. I'm trying to instill it within them. And finally, society needs to be led.